My house was on fire, but my fiancé, David, a firefighter, called everyone to save his idealized first love, Linda, who was attempting suicide. I didn't call David. I calmly watched as the home I had meticulously decorated was reduced to ashes by the fire. In my past life, he answered my call first and came to save me, who was pregnant. His idealized first love, Linda, had a breakdown due to depression and jumped from the 18th floor, disfiguring herself. David said he didn't regret saving me and our child, and our wedding proceeded as planned. But on our wedding day, he broke my leg and forced me down in front of his idealized first love, Linda's grave. The fire at the house wasn't big at all. Sarah, you deliberately sent me away, preventing me from seeing her one last time. Linda was so kind, why wasn't it you who died instead? When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day the house caught fire. This time, if he wants to save his idealized first love, Linda, then let him. I decided to give up. Thick smoke billowed. I choked, coughing uncontrollably. I quickly pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The person who answered was a voice I knew all too well. Sarah, David said you'd call. I didn't expect you actually would. On the other end of the line was my fiancé David's colleague, his good friend, Chris. Chris, my house is on fire over here. Please send someone quickly. Just as I was speaking, a wooden wardrobe nearby cracked open and collapsed, engulfed in flames. Flaming wood brushed against my skin, the searing pain made me gasp and hiss. In this critical moment, Chris's tone was light, completely disregarding my words. Sarah, stop pretending. David already told me everything. You must be jealous because he went to save his first love, that's why you called in a fake emergency. Sarah, honestly, there aren't many people left at the station right now. Stop making a fuss. After all, that's a life or death situation over there. You and Dav. are about to get married, constantly overthinking things will only hurt your relationship. The fire was growing larger. I didn't have the energy to listen to Chris lecturing me, so I hung up. I couldn't care less what he thought. Looking at this house that held 5 years of memories with David, I sighed softly and reached for my belly. I didn't expect to wake up back on that day. In my past life, this fire also happened. Back then, I called my fiancé, David, directly. He rushed over with a team to put out the fire. His first love, Linda, called him over a dozen times, but he didn't hear any of them. Later, we found out that Linda had a breakdown due to depression that day and jumped from the 18th floor. After surviving the disaster, as I cried in David's arms, he said he didn't regret saving me and the baby in my belly. Our wedding proceeded as planned. I wore the wedding dress I had dreamed of and married the man I had been with for over 5 years, full of joy, thinking we were starting a new life, but he hit me with a crushing blow. David brutally broke my leg. Blood stained my wedding dress, but he ignored it, drove me to the place where Linda jumped, and forced me to kneel and apologize to her. But I truly didn't know what I had done wrong. David was my fiancé, the father of the child in my belly. Why did his choice to save me become my fault? But David couldn't care less about that. His eyes were bloodshot, like a madman who had lost his beloved. The fire at the house wasn't big at all. Sarah, you deliberately sent me away, preventing me from seeing her one last time. If I hadn't seen Linda's diary, I wouldn't have known you were such a vicious woman. Her depression was also your doing. Linda was so kind, why wasn't it you who died instead? I had no idea what he was talking about. But David was truly insane. You should also taste what it feels like to lose someone you care about. My heart-wrenching cries of pain couldn't stir a single bit of compassion in him. He dragged me like a dead dog and locked me in a dark room. I begged him to let me go, demanding to know what our 5+ years of relationship meant to him. But David was unfazed, even pouring gasoline in the room. My last memory is of him looking down at me, as if we weren't a newly married couple, but enemies with a blood feud. He took out a lighter and ignited the gasoline. Just thinking about spending these past 5 years with a wicked woman like you makes me sick. Didn't you like using fires to trick me into coming home? Well, now you can experience what it's really like to be burned to death. Of course, being burned to death is painful. I can still never forget that bone-deep agony. And now, I was still facing the danger of being burned alive. I thought that by not calling David, I wouldn't repeat the mistakes of my past life. But I never expected him to be so cruel, telling his colleagues I was just pretending. Sharp pains pulsed in my lower abdomen, as if the child inside me was also reminding me just how heartless this man was. David and I had been together for 5 years. This house, bought 2 years ago, was intended as the house we bought together as our future home. Although it was an older neighborhood and not very big, I didn't mind. David and I were just ordinary working class people. Being able to buy a house and have our own home in Oakwood City, where property is so expensive, was already difficult. My parents died young. What I longed for most was a happy family. When our love was strong, David promised me countless times that he would make me happy, and I truly believed him. Every piece of furniture in the house, he and I chose ourselves. The flowers on the balcony, I carefully tended to them. I nurtured this place with love, shaping it into the cozy home I had imagined. But just like the suddenly aging electrical wires, the relationship between David and me had long been in trouble. Beneath every day I thought was a steady flow, lay huge hidden dangers. I calmly took out the photo album I treasured so much. It contained all the photos of David and me from the past 5 years. He used to joke with me that we should pass this album down for our children to see. But now, in less than a second, the paper album turned to ash in the flames. The fire grew larger and larger, the flames seemingly everywhere, burning the wooden bedroom door, the bed, and the curtains, surging towards me. At this moment, my only escape seemed to be that window. I quickly climbed out. Standing on the outdoor air conditioning unit, holding onto the scorching hot window, I knew the danger was far from over. This was the 5th floor. Although it wasn't very high, I was heavily pregnant. If I fell, it was hard to say what the outcome would be. Many people had already gathered downstairs, residents from the neighborhood. At a glance, there were quite a few familiar faces. Seeing me climb out of the house, the neighbors downstairs became anxious. "Hold on tight. Don't let go." We called the fire department. Even though many of them had only met me once, they were so concerned about my safety at this moment. But David, who had been with me day and night for over 5 years, nearly 2,000 days and nights, could be so indifferent. I smiled bitterly, realizing once again what it meant to have realized I had married the wrong person. With more and more people calling, Chris at the fire department finally realized something was wrong. 1 or 2 calls could still be dismissed as a fake report or an act. But with so many people calling, and their urgency growing, he started to feel unsure. Almost all the team members had been taken by David, who used his authority to go save Linda. Chris wanted to respond, but there was no one to go with him. The neighbors downstairs waited and waited, but the fire department never arrived. Meanwhile, I on the 5th floor was starting to sway precariously. The pain in my lower abdomen made my face pale, and my body trembled uncontrollably. Blisters formed on my hands from the heat, making it hard to grip the railing. Amidst everyone's shouts of alarm, I couldn't hold on any longer and fell backward. In a daze, I suddenly remembered when David and I first got together. We met through a blind date, and unexpectedly hit it off right away. Neither of us ate spicy food or liked strong flavors. We both loved watching movies and documentaries, and enjoyed keeping plants and pets. I used to think David and I were a match made in heaven, and I naively believed he felt the same way. After all, he was quite considerate, even swearing in front of my deceased parents' graves that he would be good to me forever. I never thought David would have someone else in his heart. Everyone said David loved me dearly, and I foolishly believed it. Until Linda, who was David's first love, returned from abroad. Late one stormy night, she called David, who was already asleep. He didn't hesitate, ignored my attempts to stop him, threw on some clothes, and left. Perhaps from that moment on, I should have clearly seen how important Linda was to David. Instead of being soft-hearted and believing his flimsy explanation that she had depression and he was her only support, Linda clearly could have gone to a doctor or taken medication. What sense did it make for her to contact someone else's fiancé? And it was always late at night, just the two of them. I didn't believe she had no other intentions. It was just that Linda also added me as a friend, introduced by David. The two of them became even more confident, claiming their relationship was purely platonic and that they were afraid I would misunderstand. But Linda, whom David described as pure and kind, would always inadvertently send me ambiguous pictures. Sometimes it was a picture of a movie screen they were watching together. Sometimes it was a picture of David's back as he cooked for her. Sometimes it was a profile view of David asleep from exhaustion, or their hands clasped together. I argued with David countless times because of these highly provocative photos. But every time, he would just rub his temples wearily, as if I were being unreasonable. "Sarah, I'm really tired. I just don't want Linda to commit suicide, that's all. There's really nothing going on between us. Can you please stop making a fuss?" Thinking back now on his reaction after Linda's death, it certainly didn't seem like there was nothing going on. He could even do something as insane as causing the death of me and our child for Linda. Reborn into this life, and again pushed to desperation by him. There wasn't a shred of hope left in my heart. David never loved me. I was wrong about him. I guess I was still lucky to be alive. When I fell, several kind-hearted neighbors reached out to catch me, preventing me from hitting the ground and breaking apart on the spot. But even so, being pregnant, the impact was still significant. Blood flowed unstoppably beneath me. When Chris finally called a few colleagues who were off duty and they arrived, this is what they saw. I was surrounded by people, my face pale, with multiple burns on my body. The white dress I was wearing was stained red, a terrifying sight. Sarah, he pushed through the crowd, looking panicked. How did this happen? Didn't David say you were faking it? The pain in my lower abdomen had drained my strength. I gasped for breath, looking at him with cold eyes. Does your entire fire department only listen to David? Whatever he says goes? The neighbors were also shouting curses. How do you people work? You're completely irresponsible. We waited for almost an hour before you came. Exactly. The fire was so big. If someone had actually been burned to death, could you take responsibility? She's pregnant. And the situation looks bad now. Chris was speechless from the scolding. He knew he was in the wrong, lowering his head, not daring to look at me. When the ambulance arrived, he voluntarily followed me to the hospital. All the way, he kept apologizing to me. I'm sorry, Sarah. I really didn't know this would happen. It's my fault, I trusted David too much. A nurse interrupted his rambling. Stop bothering the patient, she's in very bad shape right now. Are you her family? Chris shook his head. Then he heard the nurse say, then hurry up and contact her family. What if we need a signature later? Only then did Chris frantically call David. The call was answered quickly. Hey, Chris, what's up? Probably wanting me to hear. Chris put the call on speaker. Hearing David's voice, I instinctively shivered. His end sounded noisy, like a girl was crying. Chris didn't notice and directly told David about what happened to me. David, Sarah's place really caught fire. She jumped from the building and is being sent to the hospital now. Hurry up and come over, they might need you to sign something later. He didn't expect that after hearing what he said, David would sneer contemptuously, as if he saw right through everything. Chris, how much did Sarah pay you to trick me with her? Even if it was true, my place is only on the 5th floor. How could she possibly fall to her death? As David was speaking, a fragile female voice echoed from the other end of the phone. David, did something happen to Sarah? Maybe you should go be with her. I can manage here by myself. Don't worry, I won't jump again. It's just, living is really so tiring. The voice was clearly Linda's. David didn't even hang up the phone and quickly comforted her. Sarah is just faking it. What could possibly happen to her? There, Linda, don't overthink. I won't leave, I'll stay here with you, okay? His tone was so gentle, like he was coaxing a child. Listening to that, I just felt sick. He always believed whatever Linda said. And everything I did was just an act to him. With such blatant double standards. Where did he get the nerve to keep claiming everything was innocent? Chris also couldn't accept this. David, that's your wife and child. You're running off to deal with your first love attempting suicide and you don't even care if your wife and child live or die. Are you crazy? Perhaps afraid Linda would hear, David seemed to have moved to take the call in a different spot. Being accused by his subordinate, he was still somewhat annoyed. Chris, where do you get off talking to me like that? What kind of wife is she to me? We aren't even married yet. If you're interested in her, go for it yourself. Hearing this, Chris wanted to yank him out of the phone screen and beat him up. David, you're a real piece of work. I shouldn't have believed you. David sneered. So what? Someone as terrified of death as her, could she actually die? I just want her to pay a price, so she stops causing trouble all the time. I'm hanging up, stop bothering me. I need to go be with Linda. Chris wanted to curse him further, but David quickly hung up, making him so angry he almost smashed his phone. Everyone in the car heard David's cold and heartless words and cast sympathetic glances at me. I took a deep breath. Even though I had already recognized how heartless David was, a sense of pain still inevitably welled up inside me. After all, that was 5 solid years of my life. Furthermore, I had genuinely loved him and had even prepared myself to build a family with him. I gently touched my lower abdomen. Perhaps it was the connection between mother and child, but the intense pain from earlier seemed to have lessened quite a bit. But the medical staff's faces grew paler and paler. The patient's blood pressure is dropping. Quickly, prepare for emergency treatment. When I opened my eyes again, it felt like another lifetime. I looked at the pure white ceiling and was dazed for a long time before remembering what had happened earlier. My hand instinctively went to my lower abdomen, but it was completely flat. The belly that I had previously found heavy and even complained was a burden, was now gone. I didn't cry, but my face felt a little itchy. I raised my hand to touch it and felt moisture. Aunt Eleanor came back from outside the room. Seeing I was awake, she quickly called a nurse. She gently took my hand, her voice full of regret. "Sarah, you're still young, you can have children in the future." I didn't speak, but the hand I withdrew made my stance clear. Aunt Eleanor's expression stiffened. We had always had a good relationship, but she was still David's mother after all. Seeing my much colder attitude, Aunt Eleanor sighed. "Sarah, I know you've been wronged. You two have been together for over 5 years. I've witnessed it all. Your wedding date was set, it really wasn't easy. I don't have a daughter, and I've always thought of you as one. We didn't want something like this to happen. What David did this time was too much. When he gets here, I'll make sure he apologizes properly to you, okay?" I still didn't speak, just stared straight at the ceiling. After a long time I finally spoke. "Aunt Eleanor, you always say you see me as a daughter. If you really had a daughter and she encountered something like this, would you forgive that man? If my parents were still alive, knowing David treated me like this, they definitely wouldn't forgive him either. Aunt Eleanor, do you understand?" I was very direct. Aunt Eleanor froze, unsure how to respond. Honestly, if she really had a daughter, she really wouldn't continue to persuade her daughter to stay with someone like her son. Ignoring his girlfriend and child, running off to take care of his first love. He hadn't even shown up yet. Thinking about David's actions, Aunt Eleanor was furious. She pulled out her phone and called David again. "Where did you run off to? Didn't I tell you Sarah had an accident and you needed to come to the hospital?" David answered carelessly. "Linda hurt her foot, I brought her to get it checked." "Sarah isn't dying, what's the rush?" His attitude infuriated Aunt Eleanor. "Sarah had a miscarriage. You still have the nerve to be with someone else? Get over here now." "Miscarriage? How could she have a miscarriage?" "Mom, stop joking." David sounded as if he had heard something hilarious. "Alright, Mom, I'll come over later. First Chris, now you, I really don't know what kind of spell Sarah has cast on you." He grumbled and hung up. Another hour passed and I finally saw him. But he was followed by someone else. Who else could it be but Linda? Linda was wearing a pink floral dress. The moment she saw me, she flinched behind David, like a startled bird. "David," Sarah's eyes, they're terrifying. David immediately acted like a knight in shining armor, glaring fiercely at me. "Sarah, how many times do I have to tell you, Linda is a patient, stop targeting her, okay?" I was so angry I almost laughed. Aunt Eleanor was also annoyed at herself for raising such a blind and heartless son. She slapped David on the head. "What did Sarah do? She's lying in a hospital bed. You're blaming her without knowing the facts? Don't you know she just had a miscarriage and is very weak right now?" David hadn't spoken yet, just looked at me in surprise. Linda, however, couldn't sit still. "What? A miscarriage? Sarah actually had a miscarriage? It's all my fault. If I hadn't gotten this illness, I wouldn't have harmed Sarah like this." Her eyes reddened, and tears instantly flowed. I had to admire Linda's acting skills. If those overpaid celebrities with huge followings had acting skills like this, many TV shows wouldn't be so heavily criticized. But some men probably just like this kind of woman who makes them feel protective. Seeing David waver again, I wasn't surprised at all. He didn't consider my feelings at all, instead comforting Linda. "How could you blame yourself? The miscarriage was her own carelessness." Sid. "Yes, if she hadn't caused you to suffer from depression back then, you wouldn't have tried to harm yourself repeatedly. In the end, she brought this outcome upon herself." I sneered, almost forgetting about this matter. In my past life, David said he saw in Linda's diary that I had caused her depression. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't even know her before I was with David, how could I possibly make her depressed? Hearing my voice, David frowned, walked up to me, and said dismissively, "Alright, you were indeed wrong this time, but do you have to act like this? You already owe Linda. You can just have another baby after a miscarriage. What did you call me here for?" I lightly flexed my wrist. "David, can you come a little closer? I have something I want to discuss with you." David glanced at me in confusion, then leaned in slowly. Watching his face get closer and closer, I used all the strength I could muster and slapped him hard. Slap. After the crisp sound of the slap, there was dead silence in the room. David's face was turned to the side by the blow. He stared at me in disbelief. He seemed to have never imagined that I would be so merciless towards him. After meeting my gaze for a moment longer, David's pupils trembled. All the love and expectation I used to have when I looked at him had vanished without a trace. The way I looked at him now was no different from looking at a stranger. David, we're breaking up. David subconsciously wanted to salvage things, but then he laughed. Sarah, is this some new trick you've come up with? You think I'll never break up with you, right? Let me tell you, that playing hard to get trick won't work on me. My gaze grew colder. David was very confident. Indeed, the person I used to be had given him that confidence. Every time we argued because of Linda, I would eventually compromise because I couldn't bear to break up. But he forgot, I compromised because I loved him, and I loved the child in my belly. I see. Compromised because I wanted a happy family. But now, the child is gone, a happy family is even more impossible, and I don't love him anymore. So why should I continue to humble myself and beg for completeness? Think whatever you want. We aren't even married anyway. The house was bought together, and the renovation costs were split evenly. Remember to convert your share into money and give it to me. You figure out how to get the wedding planner to refund you. I'll send you their contact info in a bit. After saying these words, my sharp eyes caught a hint of delight on Linda's face, who was standing behind David. But David, with his back to her, was oblivious. He still stuck out his neck, indignant. What do you mean? You're really breaking up with me just because of this? Is this the first day you've known what I do? I just didn't want to see a life disappear like that. I just helped Linda out a little more. Why do you have to be so aggressive? After accusing me again, David took a deep breath. All right, your child is gone. Consider it atonement to Linda. I promise you, I will keep my distance from her from now on, okay? This was considered David making a concession to me. After all the times I had argued with him, this was the first time he said he would keep his distance from Linda. Linda, who had just been secretly delighted, couldn't maintain her composure. Her brow furrowed, just as she was about to put on a show. She froze when she met my all-knowing, half-smiling expression. I spoke slowly. David, you might have misunderstood something. I don't have a habit of recycling garbage. Besides, you've said so many times that I owe Linda. I'd like to ask you, what exactly have I done? David was stunned by my question, then a cold sharpness flashed in his eyes. After you were with me, didn't you investigate Linda? You sent emails out, telling her classmates abroad to bully her, didn't you? If it weren't for you, how could she have suffered from depression because she was being bullied? If you ask me, you should be the one apologizing to Linda. David, thinking he was on the side of justice, spoke louder and louder. But Linda looked completely awkward, standing there at a loss. Seeing her obvious guilt, I laughed heartily. So who told you this? Me sending emails abroad? What could I possibly send that would make her classmates bully her? David, I don't know whether to say you think too highly of me or too little of me. David froze, but then quickly seemed to remember something. I saw your sent items. There was indeed an email sent abroad. Aunt Eleanor, who had been silent all this time, spoke up. She looked at David, her eyes full of disappointment. That's the one I asked Sarah to help me send. Your Aunt Susan is a professor at that school, have you forgotten? David's face turned pale. Impossible, Mom, why would you use email to contact Aunt Susan? Didn't you know your Aunt Susan only checks her computer, not her phone, when she's working? David never expected the truth to be like this. He turned stiffly, looking at Linda, who was clearly flustered. Didn't you tell me back then that I shouldn't blame Sarah, and that it was because you weren't good enough, which made her feel insecure? That's why this happened? So you just went along with what I said and pinned the blame on Sarah? Linda didn't dare to look up at him. But David grabbed her by the shoulders. Answer me. His grip was strong. Linda winced in pain, then, as if scared by him, her eyes reddened. Yes, I misunderstood. But I never said the person who sent the email was Sarah. She still tried to argue. Aunt Eleanor on the side couldn't stand it anymore. She made an international call to David's Aunt Susan and asked about Linda. Aunt Eleanor had the speakerphone on. Hearing all the things she had done spill out, Linda broke down. No, it's not like that, David, listen to me explain. She tried to grab David's hand, but he shook her off. David glanced at me, still weak in the hospital bed, and let out a bitter laugh. Linda, so you were bullied because you were a habitual homewrecker. How could you possibly shift the blame onto others? And I actually believed your nonsense, harming my own woman and child. Sensing the disgust in his eyes, Linda went all out, rushed to the window, and sat with one leg outside, clearly looking like she was about to jump. David, you promised you would protect me. Do you regret it now? Her eyes were filled with tears, still putting on that pitiful look. But this time, David didn't feel the usual pity. He looked at me with guilt. Sarah, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was blinded by her lies and did so many things to hurt you. But I truly still love you. Can you please give me another chance? Before I could curse him, Linda, ignored for the first time, screamed. David, you say you love her? Then why did you sleep with me when you came to my place the night before last? Aren't you despicable? David's pupils trembled. He didn't expect her to suddenly expose him like this. Just as he was frantically trying to explain to me, he saw my calm expression, looking completely unsurprised. I raised an eyebrow, my tone mocking. You think I didn't know? Your pure and kind Linda would send me pictures every time. I told you long ago. David's eyes widened. Before, he had used the excuse of taking care of Linda to be ambiguous with her. After the truth was exposed, he could have claimed he was deceived, but now that was impossible. Under my mocking gaze and Aunt Eleanor's disappointed look, David knew his pretense had completely failed. He was utterly nailed to the pillar of shame. Enraged and humiliated, David turned his attack on Linda. Even if I slept with you, wasn't it you who seduced me? You called me over every night and practically threw yourself into my arms wearing lace camisoles. I'm a man with strong desires, Pa. Is this all my fault? If you had the guts, you wouldn't come every time I called. Coming over every single time, you knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you? Linda didn't back down either. The two of them argued more and more heatedly, each wanting to rip off the other's facade and trample it. Linda was by the window from the start, originally trying to continue using the threat of jumping to make David side with her. But arguing like this, she wasn't paying attention and actually slipped. Help! I don't want to die. Help! Her hands gripped the window edge tightly, and she screamed for help. Everyone in the room was stunned. David, what are you waiting for? Save her! I shouted. Only then did David, as if waking from a dream, reach out to grab Linda. But whether it was karma or something else, Linda lost her grip the second before he reached her and fell in terror. Thud, a heavy object hitting the ground. The person who was always threatening to jump ended up dying from a fall after all. I took a deep breath, feeling neither satisfaction nor regret. Because Linda died from the fall, all of us witnesses were interviewed. After learning that she was trying to jump on her own, the police checked her medical records. But the results showed that Linda had no illness whatsoever. Her depression was completely fake. David was even more devastated. He showed the police the records of Linda's tearful calls to him threatening to jump. If she wasn't depressed, does that mean all of this was fake too? The police officer nodded. From my description and Aunt Eleanor's, they probably sorted out the relationships between us. If David hadn't done something so outrageous, they might have felt some sympathy for him being deceived. But now, I guess you could just say he deserved it. Since there was no surveillance in the hospital room, they couldn't prove David's innocence. Linda's parents harassed him for a long time, even demanded an outrageous amount, asking him for $5 million in compensate. Ion. Both families were embroiled in disputes for a very long time. By the time David finally finished dealing with all that mess, I had quietly discharged myself from the hospital. When he called, I was already on a train heading out of town. Sarah, where did you go? I looked at the scenery outside the window, my voice flat. Does it matter to you? David, we've already broken up. David sounded a little anxious. No, please don't break up, okay? Sarah, give me another chance. We've been together for 5 years, we were about to get married. Sarah, please, don't leave me. I sneered. Stop acting. If you were really that devoted, why didn't you think about me being pregnant or us being together for 5 years and about to get married when you were entangled with Linda? Furthermore, do you think all you did was cause my miscarriage? If I had been just a little less lucky that day, I wouldn't have survived at all. What makes you think I would forgive you? David, I already told you, I don't take back garbage. Besides, in my past life, I already paid with my life because of you. This was the first time I had mentioned my past life in front of David. On the other end of the line, he was silent for a very long time, so long that I was about to hang up impatiently before David finally spoke. Sarah, I didn't expect, you were reborn too. There are quite a few things you didn't expect. I sneered. The second before I hung up, I heard him softly utter, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Those truly were the most useless 3 words. He harmed my baby and took my life. Did he think these flimsy 3 words would earn him forgiveness? Dream on. After learning that I was reborn as well, David didn't bother me again. But he didn't have the energy to bother me anymore. Chris and his colleagues at the fire department found out about the messed up things David had done. They couldn't stand it anymore and reported him to their superiors for using his authority to waste all the available personnel to save his first love, who was faking depression. The argument that happened in the hospital room that day was also overheard by nosy passers-by, who posted a vivid account of it online. People love gossip, and David went viral online just like that. But everyone was just cursing him. Due to public opinion online, the superiors who had initially been quite appreciative of David and only planned to suspend him pending investigation, directly fired him and gave him a major demerit. He could no longer strut around in his uniform and act shamelessly like before. I didn't let these past events hold me back either. After getting half the money for the house, I went back to my hometown and opened a small dessert shop. Because the decor was quite pretty and I kept a lot of green plants, it became a popular spot in the small town. I couldn't say I was rolling in money, but making a living was definitely not a problem. Within a few years, I bought a small 60 square meter apartment in the town. Living alone with a cat and a dog, it was more than enough space. The next time I heard about David was when Aunt Eleanor called me. Her voice was choked with tears, begging me to see David one last time. It turned out that after David lost his job and broke up with me, he became completely disoriented and listless. He developed severe depression, locking himself inside his home every day and drinking himself into a stupor. A week ago, Aunt Eleanor and Uncle George practically dragged him out for a medical checkup. Because of his prolonged reversal of day and night and heavy drinking, David, who was only in his 30s, was diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer. Perhaps he felt living was just a burden, or maybe for some other reason, he chased Aunt Eleanor and Uncle George away and set fire to himself in the house we used to share. Although he was rescued, he was already at his last gasp. "Mom, is that her?" I heard a weak voice on the other end of the phone. The next second, the phone was handed to David. He was breathing heavily, as if even breathing was painful. "Sarah, I understand now how much it hurts. I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry. Don't come over. I don't want you to see me like this." He rambled on into the phone for a long time. It wasn't until he stopped breathing and Aunt Eleanor picked up the phone that she realized I had already hung up. Getting involved with that kind of mess was just awful. I slowly watered the new succulent I had bought. Full of life and hope, that's what my life is now.